Good afternoon. Today we are going to discuss about classification, principles, determinants, and effects of public expenditure. As we know the importance of public expenditure is the expenditure which is incurred by the public authorities. It may be central government, state governments, and local governments. Either for for the satisfaction of the collective needs of the citizens of the country or for promotion of their economic and social welfare, they are going to spend some amount of money that is public expenditure. The volume of public expenditure, here it is when we observe over a period of time, it is almost all the countries, it is increasing continuously for all the countries in the world due to the expansion of state activities. Public expenditure is increasing. In 19th century, when we observe, the theory of public expenditure was not very necessary because the scope of the all the functions of the government was limited at the time. But during the 20th century, the development of the functions of the state in terms of social matters, public expenditure is increasing in a large portion. So the scope of public expenditure increased due to its nature and the volume of its effects on particularly for economic life of country in various ways. In fact, public expenditure, it try to or we can say public expenditure, it seeks to maximize the index of social welfare. Here, this public expenditure is, it is playing a vital role in the shaping of national economy of every country. As we know, Adolf Wagner, German economist, was you know explained about the increasing the state activities. Later, Mazdev also adopted public expenditure since the government is forced to do many activities. It may be to secure reallocation of resources, redistribute of activities, stabilizing activities, and also commercial activities purpose. It is increasing for promoting economic development. It is one of the major objective of the increasing of public expenditure. So, in a matter of fact, that public expenditure is important for accumulation of capital that leads to increase the growth productivity capacity. Modern governments, when you observe many governments, they have assumed that the role of welfare states, particularly expenditure, has growing over a period of time. As Wagner pointed out that government expenditure increases as a result, economic activities of the country also increases. So according to Weissman Peacock, increase in public expenditure is not it is due to step like growth, industrial activity. According to Peacock Weissman, public expenditure increases like step by step. However, when we are talking about the dynamic complex in nature of modern economics, it is difficult to restrain the growth of public expenditure in various reasons. When we are talking about the classification of public expenditure, public expenditure is it is more important to clear understanding in terms of nature, in terms of kinds of public expenditure. The classification of public expenditure is it related to no importance that has given importance expenditure in different times. There are various classifications of public expenditure is there. Different economists has given different. So there is a little agreement between the regard, particularly the public finance. So in this regard, Schulz says that 19th century physical writers developed considerable scope that leads to proper classification. According to test of good classification, the classification must be scientific, not ambiguous. So a good classification should be that should be satisfy at least two tests. Firstly, the classes should be mutually exclusive so that data can be allotted to one class only. So this will take the classification exact. The basis of no classification that should be a necessary attribute of the classified. Therefore, it can be a good classification should be exact without any overlaps. Basic classification also there. Different economists like Nicholson, Adam Smith, J.S. Mill, Dalton also has given. They are have given their own classifications related to public expenditure. So the different on the basis of the public expenditure has been classified, particularly on the basis of benefit. On the basis of benefit, public expenditure has classified into four parts. One important one is public expenditure that confers a special benefit to a certain people. What does it mean? It is the expenditure incurred particularly for some certain people, providing the benefit of the police protection and justice. These type of services that affect the entire community in general and certain groups or persons in a particular. That is the another. So public expenditure which benefits equally to the all. First one is for certain people. This benefit is equally to all. The second one. So all type of this type of public expenditure that incurred and general administration legislates, defense, education, transport, medical and benefit. These benefits are equal to the all the people of the country. The another you know classification of on the basis of benefit public expenditure that benefiting the people and the entire community as well as. Public expenditure, which is, that confers a benefit to the all the certain people and the entire community treated as a whole. For instance, special securities, public welfare, unemployment relief, government has to provide these benefits. Sometimes, old age pensions also. So which items which are, directly helping the particular sections of the society, the indirect effect which is experienced by the entire society as a whole. So public expenditure especially benefit for some individuals is another classification. Such expenditure it may be do not provide any advantage to the society. Subsidy is given to a particular, it may be, industries that is, public expenditure of this type. On the basis of functions also different public expenditures are there, which is, according to Adam Smith. Public expenditure on commercial activities, public expenditure on protective services, the development of the expenditure which is incurred due to social and economic development of the country, particularly like for education, health, recreation, public utility facilities, public expenditure is increasing. As I said, public expenditure on productive services based, it is increasing. Like arms, ammunition, defense, police administration, and jail, government has to spend some amount of money on this. So it is increasing. As I said, expenditure on commercial activities also. Like railways, road and highways, which are, the government is taken initiatives. It is based on the public interest. Public expenditure based on revenue also there. Public expenditure based on revenue. So without a direct return of any revenue, like poor relief, some cases, like within direct benefit as well as direct loss or direct loss. Just example, expenditure on wars. Public expenditure without a direct return with indirect benefit of revenue, that is, expenditure on education and health. Public expenditure, it is, partial direct return, education for fees which are charged, subsidized by the railway services. This public expenditure will full return even profit like post office, gas services, public enterprises also. According to Dalton has given classification of public expenditure, which is into two categories. One is grants and the another one is purchase price. Grant in and purchase price. When the state spends money and gets returns, based on some services or commodities like purchase price. Salaries of government employees, the price which is paid for purchasing, it may be furniture. The government spends money, does not get any commodity or services, right? That is we call it as return or grants. that is, relief to the poor. Dalton says that, the price may include the element of, grant. When the government says, particularly, it pays for the, a price higher than the price that would be, offered by the private buyer. The excess can be regarded as grant. Dalton also distinguished between direct and indirect grants. Grant may be, direct when the whole benefit that accrues the person to whom the grant is made. It may be said indirect. The benefit is passed on the whole from the person to whom the grant is made to some other person. Likewise, there are different classifications of public expenditure is there. One of the important one is canon of public expenditure, canon of benefits, canon of economy, surplus, canon of elasticity, canon of productivity, canon of equitable distribution. But here, the point is that what are the determinants, what are the factors that are determining the public expenditure? That is more important. Various factors which are influencing the increasing of public expenditure. One of the important one is welfare state, welfare of the state. Modern times, states are welfare states. They are try to promote economic, political, and social life for the people. As we know that this is in true when we observe there are many, welfare functions are there like public health and education. All type of government either capitalistic or communistic they have to spend on welfare functions. The state satisfies many wants of the society. They may be collective. When we observe Keynes and other opinion, state must be, intervene in the economic system of the country, particularly, to stabilize the advanced countries, acceleration of rate of growth, underdeveloped countries. You know, public expenditure, which is considered desirable to the country out of depression. Wagner's law, increasing state activities, universally true in modern times, is related to welfare of the state. The another one is industrial development. After the world depression, government took activities, participation to promote the industrial development, to promote the industrial development. It is also, rising the trends of the prices. This may be the prices overall, the world since the Second World War is another factor for rising the public expenditure, rise in the price level that has two important effects. One is government maybe have to pay higher prices for their all goods and services, and the another, the larger the financial resources that meets the growing expenditure. Another factor or that is influencing the public expenditure is that development of the agriculture. Development of the agriculture. As we know, no, it is a key factor of progress of the economy as a whole, particularly in developing countries like India. The expansion of agriculture sector, it may be provide or it leads to stimulus the industrialization. On the other hand, when we observe industrial sector particularly, it helps to supply the modern tools implementation where it is responsible for rise the agriculture productivity. Modern governments are spending huge amount for development of the agriculture sector. So therefore, when we observe loans, stabilized fertilizers, pesticides, which are minimum prices given to the betterment purpose. They also spend a lot of money on agricultural research and conservation programs. Research and conversational programs. So here, urbanization also one of the reason for increasing the agriculture expenditure. Urbanization also one of the important reason for increasing expenditure. So that we are telling urbanization also one of the factor that is influencing the public expenditure. No, there has been increasing a tendency of public expenditure on civil and administration due to rise in the population. These are increased. The expansion of water supply, electricity, transport, that maintains the roads, educational instruments, traffic control. Due to these, public expenditure is going to increase. The another one is social security measures. Social security measures. As we know, the modern governments they have taken up the responsibility of protecting the the interest of the community. So that is the reason why, as a whole, and promoting the implementation of welfare programs. Here, it can be said that state has come. They try to reduce social inequalities in the society. Welfare aspects of the government that is described as Wagner. Described as Wagner. So Wagner as a pressure of social progress. War and military expenditure also increase our capacity. So here, war and military expenditure also increasing continuously because one nation wants to strengthen its defense. Other countries they compel to take these similar steps, particularly in their defense sector. So manufacturing nuclear weapons, training and planning army, they may be country to country it may increase. Growth of population also one of the reason or one of the factor that is influencing the public expenditure, increasing the public expenditure. So here, as we know that the responsibility for increasing the public expenditure as government, they try to needs money to perform various functions effectively. That is also one of the reasons. Government has also checked the growth of their population. Therefore, it has been a huge amount for the family planning programs for every year. Growth of transportation and communication also one of the reasons for increasing the public expenditure. Adoption of planning in modern world, all popular governments they have developed an economic planning that is one form of or the other form for the development of the country. Development of the country. Adoption and planning also one of the factors for increasing the public expenditure. Rural development schemes. Generally, the government has to spend huge amount for development of rural areas. Like where the majority of the population lives in villages, as we know, it has been undertake this scheme like it is undertaken the community development projects and other social measures, particularly developing countries like India, that maybe schemes have been introduced. So obviously, due to the various schemes, they have raised the expenditure on the basis of government multifold. Relief and rehabilitation also there. So what are the factors we have seen so far? What are the you know effects of the public expenditure? Effects. The effects of public expenditure varies over a period of time. It may be increase. It needs to. It depends on the indispensable physical instrument and economic stability and social welfare. As a matter of fact, that the policies of taxation and public expenditure that are complementary and supplementary to each other. When we are talking about the Dalton, the effects of public expenditure can be classified and mentioned according to Dalton. So, effects of public expenditure on production. Effects of public expenditure on production. Here, the nature and the volume of public expenditure are bound to have sense effect on a particular or the production of the country, pattern of the country, we can say. So therefore, the public expenditure policy that is designed to development and remaining that maybe the production is increased and encouraged. Dalton's effects of public expenditure on production, which is depends upon the effects of the or what can we say the effects upon the various reasons. So one of the reason is that or effect is that It is an effects on you know ability to work and save interest. So public expenditure can be public expenditure may be increase that affects on willingness to work and invest, save and invest. This is also one of the effects of public expenditure on production. The another one, diversion of economic resources as public expenditure diverse. It has been, you know, particularly the expenditure, the resources from private and public, they use in many different ways. Expenditure on defense, police, civil administration, which all are comes under you know, the reason for increasing the public expenditure and the effects of the public expenditure. Dalton, when we observe, he pointed out certain, forms of public expenditure, particularly, to increase the productivity, power, and socially desirable. So, expenditure and debt reduction, when most money repaid by researcher, uh, that is, generally when major projects like transport development, irrigation, forestation, and reclamation, they may yield large returns in the long run, but not in the immediate nature and they not the private investment. So we are talking about the effects, progressive, proportional, regressive expenditure. So Dalton has pointed out that taxation and public expenditure that can be, it may be you know recipient in nature, small. No, when we talk the recipients in income and the smaller the proportionate addition, that may be a grant progressive, the recipient income. So if the public expenditure is more benefiting to the regressive, it is progressive if it is more benefiting to the poor people, that is progressive tax. If the public expenditure is so incurred, that is it infers benefit on different groups of the community, the proportion of their income, that may be the expenditure is to be proportional. The effects of public expenditure on economic stability. So the effects of public expenditure in depression. Generally, depression is a condition when savings exact exceeds the investment. The another one is effects of public expenditure in inflation. Public expenditure can also help inflationary conditions because inflation is not in a condition when this is invested or that exceeds. In this situation, the aim of the government that should be rising prices may also be checked, increasing the value, particularly goods and services in the country. So such circumstances, this due to this reason, public expenditure should be incurred on the projects which rise sufficiently the volume of the production within a short time. Another one is effects of public expenditure on economic development and growth. So this expenditure plays an active role. They try to reduce disparities between the states. They will develop the social overheads, creating infrastructure facilities, encouraging education and training, growth of capital, particularly on industries, development of. So here, in the case of well advanced economy, public expenditure maintains a smooth manner, economic growth gets stabilization and stimulation of economic activities. So the public expenditure is great role playing for stimulation of savings and capital accumulation. As when we observe public expenditure in the shape of subsidies that can prove are helpful for attaining the economic growth, it can be used to rise the agricultural production and reduce the regional disparities. So the public expenditure in the form of investment and education, various service that leads to increase the company rather than the savings. When we are talking about the sources, classification and effects and redemption of public expenditure, redemption of public expenditure. What are the sources of public expenditure? Many government they forced to borrow from different sources like finance their developmental programs, public debt that has become necessary to meet the various requirements as we are seeing also. The temporary deficits of the development economies also. So the finance of the developmental programs, the plan requires particularly the large amount of funds. That is the reason why the multi-projects, long gestation of projects that yield benefits in the long run, that requires massive investment. These projects are financed by public debt. Modern governments are assumed the role of welfare state, which resulted in expansion of functions. So it became the obligatory for the government. So the commitment of the government, they try to provide or promote the rate of growth as an economy that leads to expansion of public sector and investment. So massive investment in public sector, commercial enterprises, that has been financed by public debt. So every government has two major sources of. One is the borrowing of internal and external. Internally, the government can borrow from the individuals. The government can be borrow from the institutions, or the government can be borrow on commercial banks and central bank. So the government can borrow from individuals, books, and also particularly the government borrows international institutions and foreign governments also. They borrow from the individuals, they borrow from non-banking financial institutions also, borrowing from commercial banks. Individuals means the individuals purchase government bonds, they divert into funds from the private use to government use. These individuals may be able to subscribe to government bonds either through the current consumption where it requires. Borrowing from the non-banking financial institutions. When the governments are borrow from the non-banking financial institutions, that leads to increase. No government, they try to buy bonds, they reduce their idle cash balances by making investment on the government bonds. So therefore, the rate of no that is perfectly free from the credit risk, that also reduces due to their high negotiability and liquidity. That is also one of the reason. So the interest which is paid by the government on bond is however it is very low. Borrowing from the commercial banks, as we know, commercial banks can subscribe to the government bonds through creation of money. Borrowing from the external sources also. So classification of public debt. Classification of public debt. Productive and unproductive public debt. Internal and external public debt. Redeemable and irredeemable debt, which are different classification of public debt. Effects also there, particularly the due to public debt. It affects on consumption, because the existence of public debt is important effect on consumption. Those who hold the government bonds representing the letters, that is obligation to pay particularly these bonds on a personal wealth. So the net results are the only position of government, that income. The net results not only the position of current income, but also it access their current income in the form of interest, since it may be hold on wealth, right? So what happened automatically, the effects of public debt, it is to increase the percentage of total income spent on consumption. As a result, what will happen? expansion effect on the economy. So it also affects on liquidity. It also affects on productivity or production. Liquidity. Public debt is represented by the bonds which are highly negotiable. Those who having bonds have highly negotiable and highly liquid from the assets. Whenever we observe, no, the individuals are require more funds for the public transaction purpose, which may be precautionary or speculative motive. So the importance of public effect, government bonds to be formed in the case of commercial banks. The banks who hold large amount of government bonds, which can be convertible into cash easily. It is also affects on production. It is also affects on distribution. It is also affects on private sector. So the burden of public debt. What are the measures or measurement of debt? Generally, debt to income ratio, the ratio of the total debt to the national income of the country in a year, we call it as debt to income ratio. This ratio indicates or strengthen and efficiency of the economy in terms of national income that is related to public debt. So when the national income increases, that is the adequately to repay public debt, it not be burden for the nation because national income of the people is increasing. So I'm going to stop here. We'll discuss next class.